بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه وبعد. Inshallah ta'ala, we're going to start with Sunnam al-Wusul ila ilm al-usul. And today's class is going to be a little short. Inshallah ta'ala, we don't want to cover, we have a lot to cover, so it's better to break it down into smaller pieces. So, yes, here's where we are. So we're going to be doing issues revolving or involving what is in these three lines of poetry, line 24 to 26. So the Sheikh Hafiz al-Hakami, rahimahullah, he says, أول واجب على العبيد معرفة الرحمن بالتوحيد. Okay, so that's the first line. The second line, he says, إذ هو من كل الأوامر أعظم وهو نوعان أي من يفهم. Okay, so that's the 25th line. And the 26th line, he says, إثبات ذات الرب جل وعلا أسماؤه الحسنى وصفاته العلى. Okay, so in the 24th line, he says, the first obligation upon a servant is knowing the most merciful with Tawheed, being that it is the greatest command from all commanded, and it is of two types for those who understand. Affirmation of the being, the Lord, great and high, his beautiful names and lofty attributes. Okay. So what is it that the Sheikh, or what are some of the issues the Sheikh has mentioned in these three verses? We're going to be getting deep into the issue of Tawheed, which is one of the most important things when it comes to the aspect of a Muslim's belief that he should know. It is what enters a Muslim into the fold of Islam, and not understanding it, not implementing it correctly, can expel a person out of the fold of Islam. So one of the things that these three verses they address is the issue of the categories of Tawheed. The categories of Tawheed. And when we talk about Tawheed, we're talking about the oneness of Allah, or what they say monotheism, right? Which they say that the Abrahamic religions are based off of, although I don't know how some of them could be considered monotheistic religion when its premise is based upon the association of partners with Allah, and Allah knows best. So when it comes to the categories of Tawheed, there are two types, meaning that the Tawheed has been classified in two different ways, right, by some of the scholars. There are those scholars who classify Tawheed with three categories, and that is lordship, worship, and names and attribute. Most people know this right? Most people, when they learn about Aqeedah, when they learn about Tawheed, they know about the three categories of Tawheed. Some people know about the other way of dividing the aspects of Tawheed into two categories. And it is knowledge and affirmation, which is ma'rifa wal ithbat, right, in Arabic. And then you have inquiry and intentions, right, which is talab and qasd, or irada, depending on who says this. Now, if you guys were listening, or if you guys understood what the Sheikh was saying, he did mention one of these divided, or one of these ways of categorizing Tawheed, the way that he prefers, or the way that he has been taught. And it is the one in which Tawheed is divided into two. So he believes that Tawheed can be divided into these two categories, which is knowledge and affirmation, and inquiry and intentions. Okay. So because this is the category, or this is the type of division of Tawheed that is mentioned, we're going to delve into that aspect more, bithnillahi jalla wa ala, in this class. So the two categories of Tawheed, like we said, we have knowledge and affirmation, right? Ma'rifa wal ithbat. So ma'rifa and ithbat, or knowledge and affirmation, inside of this category is the categories of lordship and the names of attribute. Okay, so knowing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the creator, knowing that he is the one that owns and operates everything that happens in this world, in this creation, that is part of the Tawheed of knowledge and affirmation. We know this, we affirm this. And also, anything that is connected to Allah himself is from this category as well. So that includes his names and attributes, right? So those, his names and attributes, and the lordship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this is in the category of knowledge and affirmation. So then that leaves the category of inquiry and intentions, which is going to be the issue dealing with worship, right? So even though there's two categories, we still see all three of the other categories within them in one of the category or another. So the first category, we have two of the three that people are used to, you know, when you break down the categories of Tawheed. And then the last one, which is inquiry and intentions, we have the category of worship, which is singling out Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in all aspects of ibadah, all aspects of worship. So that's all we're covering today. Now there is more. We're going to delve deeper into that a little bit more, and we're going to expound on that, because I know that for a lot of people, this is new. These two categories are new. You'd probably never heard this before. You've probably been memorizing those three aspects of Tawheed since who knows when, and thinking that, you know, that's all there is to it. That's what you need to know in order to really understand Tawheed and its branches and so forth. But the truth is that the scholars have divided Tawheed, or broken down Tawheed different ways. There's some scholars that put Tawheed into four categories. right? And so we have 2, we have 3, we have 4. And someone might ask, okay, so what about the issue of hakimiyah? For those who know, this was a big issue back in the days for a lot of people. And hakimiyah is talking about the rulership of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that, believing that Allah is the only one that is the judge, the only one that makes laws, right? And this is an issue that it's very interesting, because if you don't know, when someone comes with you with this 4th category, this category of Tawheed, and say, there's Tawheed Hakimiyya, and you say, no, 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 you can't have Tawheed Hakimiyya, you can't have Tawheed of Allah's rule. And they say, why not? Allah is the only one that makes laws. Allah is the only one whose laws we follow, or we should follow. So why can we have a 4th category, Tawheed Hakimiyya? And you say, no, there's only 3. And they'll come to you and say that, no, that's not true. Before that, some scholars said there's only 2, or there's 2 categories. So some scholars say there's 2 categories, some scholars say there's 3. Why can't other scholars say that there's 4? Now, here's the thing that you guys have to understand, because we did say that there are some scholars that have divided Tawheed into 4 categories, but they did not make the 4th category Hakimiyya, right? They did not make it about Allah's rule. Now, the thing that you have to understand when it comes to Tawheed Hakimiyya, or the oneness of Allah's rule, those people, those scholars who made that a 4th category of Tawheed, there has to be a question that must be posed when we talk about that category. First of all, we affirm that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the only one that should, that makes laws, and that on whose laws we follow. We believe in the oneness of Allah's rule, right? But the thing is that the question that needs to be asked is, why is it so important for you to make this an aspect of Allah's oneness that you want to focus in? Because that's what you do when you put those things into categories. That's what you're doing. You're bringing attention to those aspects, right? You're saying that this is such a main factor of Tawheed that it deserves to have, or it deserves to be singled out in its own category. And if you go back and you look and you see that a lot of the people who try to push the Tawheed Hakimiyya, the oneness of Allah in His rule, you'll find that these are the same people that make takfir of people who rule by that which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has not sent down. So you'll find these are the people that they say that the Muslim ruler that rules by other than what Allah has sent down, that they are kuffar, they are disbelievers, and so forth. Now, some of you guys might be asking yourselves, well, isn't that true? And there is a yes and no answer to that. It's true from one aspect, and it's not true from another. Because when it comes to aspects of Tawheed, there is different levels of disbelief. Now, if a person rules by what Allah has sent down, not believing that it is better than the rule of Allah or even equal to the rule of Allah, but because they know that by ruling by other than what Allah has sent down, it will bring them the acceptance of the West or money or whatever the case may be, then that is a shirk, an association that is less than that which will expel a person from out of the fold of Islam. Now, if that person, the individual says there's nothing better than than these rules that the Egyptians wrote down a long time ago. We have to come into the 21st century, guys. I mean, Islam is or something that's supposed to be in the books. When it comes to implementation, as long as we read Quran, we'll be okay. Now that's a different issue. That person obviously, and we're using this as an example, because every time when it comes to putting a ruling of someone, whether it is with disbelief or with them being a fasik, meaning that they are transgressing the bounds of Allah through sin, or whether it be through innovation, when it comes to specifics, we have to deal with each scenario, each situation as it comes. We cannot use general rulings and apply to a specific individual. And that's the reason why those rulings are left to the scholars, who are able to take those general principles and know how to apply them to specific individuals, and making sure that all of the conditions are met and all of the things that will prohibit that ruling from being implemented has been lifted, or they're not present. Okay, so with that being said, that's what we're going to cover for this class, inshallah ta'ala. So we're going to back up off of that right now and see if we can okay. Okay, so the last thing that we covered when it came to the issue of fiqh, we entered into the sunan of the salah, and we mentioned one, or the first sunan of the salah, and that's as far as we got. Okay, I think this is it right here. Or did we get this far? No, I don't think we got this far. Okay, so I'm sorry. I think we were still doing the wajibat, and we covered the last wajib. I think Qa'datul Ula, Takbir, or Jahiyah. We did this. Okay, so yeah, all right. So here's where we are right now. We're going to talk about the last wajib of the salah, and then we're going to enter into talking about the sunan of the salah. So here the Shaykh, he says, وَالْكَعْدَةُ الْأُولَى وَأَمَّا السُّنَّةُ فَرَفْعُهُ الْيَدَيْنِ هَذِي أُذُنَ. So here the Shaykh, he continues to explain the other obligations of the prayer. He mentions the obligations, which is the first sitting for the tashahhud. So the first sitting for the tashahhud is obligatory. The first sitting for the tashahhud is obligatory. Okay. So if we look here, we've covered 9 obligations of the prayer, and that's all we're covering, right? So that with that, we finished the 9 obligations, or we finished the obligations for the prayer. So those obligations are the opening takbir, right? Saying Allahu Akbar. Okay. Reciting Surah Al-Fatiha and another surah, right? The tashahhud is also wajib. And here we're talking about both the first sitting for the tashahhud and the last sitting for the tashahhud. Notice that we separate between the sitting and the saying of the tashahhud. Those two things are not the same. Because if you remember, when it came to the pillars of the salat, we had the final sitting for the tashahhud being mentioned as one of the pillars, right? So the pillar is the sitting, the final sitting. Saying the tashahhud is obligatory, right? Number 4 we have here is being relaxed in the different motions of the salat, so meaning no haste, making sure that your limbs are fixed into those positions before you move to another position. Hold on. Okay. Sorry about that. Okay, so yes, and after that we have number 5, which is the dua for witr. That is wajib. The taslim for exiting the prayer is wajib. It's obligatory, right? And if you remember that we said that from the rukn, from the pillar, is exiting the prayer from something that a person does themselves, right? That is a pillar from the salah. You have to do that. The obligation, though, to specifically specify the taslim, means saying assalamu alaikum, that is obligatory. Okay, and number 7, we have the additional takbirat for the Eid, as well as recitation aloud or to oneself. So those salats where you have to recite out loud, reciting out loud for those salawat is obligatory, and for those where you recite to yourself, those salawat it's obligatory for you to recite to yourself. And notice that we say recite to yourself and not recite in your mind. There is a difference. I mean, there should actually be, your mouth should be moving, sound should be coming out, but it is only audible to you. Okay? Because the salat is dhikr. The salat is dhikr. And dhikr is something that is said with the tongue. Right? Without doing that, you're not saying anything. You're thinking it. All right, that's something that some people might not know. Allah knows best. Okay, so and then we have for number 9 is sitting for the first tashahhud. Sitting for the first tashahhud is obligatory. Okay, so now that we covered that, we're going to go to the second half of that line, which enters into the sunnah now of the salah. And this is not the right time for us to talk about what exactly is sunnah. We mentioned sunnah here, but generally the definition of the fuqaha, those scholars of jurisprudence, is that the sunnah is that which a person is rewarded for doing it if they do it, with intention, right? But they are not punished if they leave it off. They're not punished if they leave it off. So that's the general definition of sunan, according to who? The scholars of jurisprudence. That means that the word sunnah has a lot of different meanings, but inshallah ta'ala we'll come to that when the time comes. Hold on. Let's see what's going on. Okay, hello. All right, so yeah, we'll get into the different meanings of sunnah and things like that. Because what some people do is they take that definition by the jurisprudence or the jurist, the jurist, and they apply that outside of the scope of fiqh, and that is wrong. That is wrong. Okay, we'll explain that inshallah ta'ala when the time comes. Okay, so the first sunnah that the Sheikh mentions is raising the hands to the ears. So from the first sunnah that's mentioned that we have down here is raising the hands to the ears when you do the takbiratul ihram. When you do that takbir to begin your prayer, when you say Allahu Akbar, raising your hands to the ears. Now, what does that mean? The scholars have a lot of different interpretation for that, you know, because really, when I translate to the ears, it's kind of general, but the word that's actually used is opposite of the ears or across from the ears. I guess it would be another way of translating that, and that could have a lot of different meanings. Is across this way, you know, where it's like at the side of the ears, or is it in front of the ears? Is that across from the ears? So a lot of different interpretations for that. And with that, our class comes to a close. Are there any questions?
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah.
Yeah, if you could explain to me what you mean when you say the first tashahhud. I know we have, you know, when you're basically like after you give I'm sorry, I can't get my words straight tonight.
No problem.
When you say Al-Fatiha and then the surah, then you know, you basically give like a shahada. And you're sitting, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then after you do the other two of Al-Fatiha after that, then you're in tashahhud. So what does it mean first tashahhud? That's what I'm confused about.
Okay, so let's first understand what the word tashahhud means. The word tashahhud comes from the word shahada, right? So it's when you say ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna muhammadan rasulullah. When we talk about the tashahhud, we're talking about when we're in the sitting position. Usually this will be in the second unit, and if it's Maghrib, it will be the second and third when we're sitting. And we do the tashahhud, which is atahiyyatu lillah wassalawatu wattayyibatu assalamu alayka ayyuhan nabiyyu wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh assalamu alayna wa ala ibadillahi salihin ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika lah واشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. That is the end of the tashahhud. What comes after that, when you say Allahumma salli ala Muhammad, this is not the tashahhud. This is called Salat Ibrahimiyya. Okay, so that's different.
Okay.
So when we talk about the tashahhud, that's what we're talking about.
Okay, so you're saying that first part, what you just recited, that is obligatory for us to be seated. Now, now the second part, what you were just talking about, which is, you know, that one, I mean, normally you stay seated when you're reciting that as well, but they're saying that it's not obligatory.
No, that's not part of the tashahhud in general, but you do say that for the last sitting. But that's something different. That has a different name to it. You include that with the tashahhud in the last sitting.
Right. So, and that's what I'm saying. So we would just normally stay sitting after the tashahhud, right? We just normally stay sitting. I've never seen anybody stand up. after that and continue to recite?
Depends on which salat we're talking about. If we're talking about a salat where we're doing the tashahhud in more than one unit, meaning like, for example, in Asr or Dhuhr, Maghrib and Isha, where there is two sittings, right? Because in Dhuhr, you sit in the second unit, at the end of the second unit, and you also sit at the end of the fourth. Likewise, in Isha and Asr, you do the same thing. So for those three salat, you do the tashahhud for the second unit, at the end of the second unit, then you get up, right? And you continue your prayer. And then you do the same thing at the end of the fourth unit.
Right.
And then you add to that the Salat Ibrahimiyya, and then you salam out.
I think I'm not asking the question correctly, but I get what you're saying though. You answered my question.
Oh, I was able to answer it. Okay, well, that's the important part.
Shukran.
Afwan. Any other questions? Okay. All right, seems like there's no other questions, so we'll end right here. So we say, سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك واشهد ان لا اله الا انت واستغفرك واتوب اليك. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.